I'm more in love with the job now than I feel like I ever have been. But I still wish that I had that innocence of a 19-year-old kid walking in nervous as hell for his first shift who thought that I was just going to be going fire to fire, kicking ass all across the city.
What's up, guys? Welcome back. Tailboard Misfits podcast. I'm your host, John Velez. Today, we have the honor of talking with Mr. Robert Evans. He's an 8-year guy, both volunteer and career. He's a captain at a department in Eastern Tennessee, and he also runs the social media page, The Citizens Firemen. So, Robert, what's up, brother? How are you?
Doing good. How are you?
Pretty good, man. It's been a rough morning after getting off shift this morning, but I think we're gonna make it.
I feel you on that. I was scrambling around trying to get my truck to a transmission shop this morning. So hopefully this will be a good change for us.
Yeah. So we know you run the Citizens Fireman social media page. That's on Instagram, Facebook as well, right?
Not Facebook yet. Right now, the only place that it is Instagram.
Okay,
Once
Instagram.
the once it starts taking off a little bit more with some of the other stuff, I'm sure we'll get into talking about. Then we'll start branching out some other platforms, but just Instagram for now.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself, man. We know, like you said, you told me you're from Eastern Tennessee, just kind of the dynamics of your fire department, how you guys typically respond, your staffing, stuff like that.
All right, like I said, I work for a smaller department in East Tennessee. We run two engines and a battalion. Been understaffed for a long time. Got task studies back from the late 90s that said that we should have been sitting at four stations then, but we're still sitting at two. So, just like everywhere else in the American Fire Service, we're the doing more with less. Seems like it's the common thing everywhere you go. But we run two 3-man engines and then of course the BC. I was lucky enough to get promoted to captain last January, so I'm at our station two, away from all the admin. I'm up there with just myself, a driver, and a firefighter. Real lucky with that. My driver's actually my best friend from high school, so we have a lot of fun. Don't run many fires, but we average anywhere from we can have a 5, 6 call shift to upward of 15 to 20. So it's all hit or miss, but we actually just got a new training facility this year. So even with a lot of the fire load not being there, we've still got ways to get out and stay busy with some fireman stuff every once in a while.
That's awesome, man. Because I know, like, anytime we've been on a dry spell, we always compare it to like playing in the Super Bowl, right? Like every fire we go to is our Super Bowl. And once we've been on a dry spell, it's just like we've been practicing and practicing and practicing. And it gets frustrating whenever we're getting all this practice, but we're never getting to actually perform, right? So I know, like, uh, whenever we've been on a dry spell, we actually catch a job or something. Like, it's always a good feeling to get to go do work with your boys, and especially like your best friend. That's pretty awesome, man.
It is. And
Um,
like you said too, with the dry spell and just the constant practicing, you got to keep everybody invested in that too, because it's easy to fall complacent to that of, why are we going out and working on this stuff? I've not caught a job in 8 months. Like, why am I working on pulling hose lines? Why am I throwing ladders every shift?
yeah,
But it's part of the job.
it is. It is, and you got to stay prepared because recently did a podcast with Rob Ramirez, and he says the shit that never happens all the time. So we got to stay ready and stay prepared, and whenever that time comes, we got to be ready to perform. So you mentioned that you guys were a relatively young department. Um, you're obviously a younger officer. How has that transition been for you, as far as leading guys, but still being relatively young and not super tenured? You got some time under your belt, but you're not pushing 10 or 12 or 15 years or anything like that.
Luckily for me, whenever I came into the department back in 2017, it was during a large hiring phase there. They had a lot of people leave, a couple retire. So a lot of us came in the department together. There's not many of the older guys left. Most of them are sitting in your, BC, deputy chief, fire chief's position. Even our fire chief, I'd say, is probably one of the youngest career fire chiefs I've ever met. I believe he's in his mid 30s. But for the guys that are on the line all day in suppressions, a lot of us came up through the volunteer service together, came to work for this department together. So it's not too difficult to step up into that officer's position and have people look at you. It's not like I'm having to deal with a 20-year guy riding the back seat with someone who's worked for the department for 6 years, jumping up into the right front seat, trying to tell him what to do. And luckily, having like I said, I work up at Station 2. I've only got two people up there with me, one being my best friend. But the firefighter on our truck's actually the oldest guy on our engine, but he comes to work every day with the mindset of, hey, these people are putting their jobs for a reason. So we don't really have run into many issues. It was a little bit of a transition. I was I fell into some complacency there during my time as an engineer, and really before I started the Citizens Fireman page and really started diving back into the fire service, kind of got burnt out with the job. So I had to, not so much the transition of going from engineer to captain, but the transition of going from complacent engineer to an engineer that was in love with it again was a little more difficult than anything, I'd say.
Right. Yeah. I could imagine that would be pretty difficult, especially just given the circumstances. But have you had, you mentioned you get hired on with a bunch of guys all at once. Um, and really, obviously, someone kind of taught you stuff that you knew. Did that come from your department or was it outside of your department? Do you have mentors elsewhere that kind of helped you along your way and are still helping you?
I've been blessed to work with some good officers in my time in the department. Most of them aren't there with us anymore. They've either retired or they've chose to leave and go elsewhere. And then vice versa, I've worked with people before that I look up and say, if I'm ever sitting in his seat, I don't want to be like him either. But jumping back to, like I said, when I was got real complacent there as an engineer, I actually went to a class in Dalton, Georgia, taught by the Bears of the Oath. I don't know if you're familiar with them, Shane Bentley and a bunch of those guys. Went to their engine truck class and it kicked my ass. And that was kind of the pivotal point for me of saying, I've got to make a decision here. Am I going to ride out and pretty much be a piece of shit? Because I work in a department to where you can sit back in the shadows and you can get away with that. It's unfortunate, but you can. Or do I want to step up and do something about it? So I decided to take that road, and I met some people through the Bears and some different conferences, things like that that I've gone to. So I've had a lot of influence in the fire service outside of my department that's kind of helped drive me along and make me want to be better in the job and at the department and, kind of outside doing some instructor stuff and the page, things like that.
Yeah, I know. It seems to be a common theme amongst people like yourself, and we were talking about Preston Lyons before this, and just a lot of other people that the people that tend to stay within their own four walls of their department. It's very hard for them to break out of that and not move their career forward. And I'm not even talking about wanting to do a podcast or wanting to go instruct or anything like that. But the people that uh, and everyone has their own reasons. It's not like a negative thing, but the people that don't seek that, either from the people that do get out of their department or get out themselves, seem to just kind of be stagnant. And like you said, I think it's pretty easy, regardless of where you go, that you can get in a place where you can just hide in the shadows and really not make a lot of noise and just kind of exist there. Um, I know for myself, like I've gone through phases in my career where it was going to be pretty easy just to ride out the situation that we were in. You know, I had a conversation with the guys like I can do what I've been doing every day and be completely comfortable with it, and that's show up, check the truck off, eat breakfast, clean up the station, read a book, take a nap, get up, work out, eat lunch, and then we go play pickleball after dinner. Like I can do that every single shift, no problem. That's fun, but that's not why I'm here, right? Like it kind of goes back to like why I was a fireman, why I wanted to work for the department that I work for. And I think every now and then a lot of people just need to be reminded of like why they're doing their job and really what it's about and who we're here for. And so that kind of brings me to my next thing is about who we're here for. So I'd imagine the citizens firemen, there's something along the lines of for the citizens with it. So tell us about that. How did it come to fruition and what you're doing with the page? I think is pretty awesome. Just tell us about it a little bit.
So it was right about the time that I got promoted last year. I believe the page is coming up on being about a year old now. Like you just said, the four walls of your own firehouse. Like I wasn't happy with that. So before I got promoted, I was at a point to where I was trying to make a decision of was I going to stay where I'm working at now, which is my hometown department. It's where I grew up, got hired there almost immediately out of high school. I think I'd been out of high school like a year whenever I came on the job full time. So there was a lot of emotional ties there, but we're also sitting in between two very large cities. And I was looking up north at this big city and they were hiring. I was going up there to some of their events, talking to the guys, and I'd applied and was almost through their hiring process whenever I really started to take the things into consideration of why I was looking at leaving. Because it was kind of one of those, I thought that the grass was going to be greener on the other side, and I was ignoring what I had here. And I ended up deciding that this is where I live. There's a lot of benefits of working out of the city that I live in, and I didn't want to leave that behind. So I was like, I'm all right, I'm gonna stick it out here. I ended up applying for the company officer's position, got it, and still decided that I wanted more out of the fire service than what the four walls of my firehouse had to offer me. So I decided to branch out with the social media page as more of a way to keep myself motivated in the job and to try to share things with others because I'm that kind of person. If I can motivate someone else, then I find self motivation in that as well. So that's where the page started at, and it's kind of just took off from there.
Well, I like that because I've talked about it. And we kind of talked about it briefly. Whenever I took over, the TBM's stuff, and uh, even on my personal stuff, I've always thought of putting stuff out there in a sense of it's speaking it into existence. And so like you have to say it out loud. You have to do it. With a lot of different things, right? Like different challenges. Like I made it known that I was doing the 75 hard challenge last year, right? And that's almost it was a form of accountability because now I have I don't know how many followers, right? And they're like, oh, he's out drinking at a bar now. He's not doing 75 hard anymore, and it kind of looks bad on me. I don't want that. So it was a form
Yeah,
of accountability. Same thing, the Fit to Fight Fire. Every December they do the 100 burpees a day for the month of December. I was like, I'm gonna do this, and I started posting that on TBMs and stuff. Just me knocking out like the last 10 burpees of the 100 each day, and it was a form of accountability because there were days where I was like, I do not want to do these burpees, and I was like, well, if I don't, and I don't go post this at least on my story, like I'm letting. Honestly, like I felt like I was letting everyone down, but people could probably care less. But nonetheless, it was a form. It was a form of accountability for myself. So I like that.
it is.
I thought,
You're getting something for yourself out of it while you're also trying to share something with others. Like, and it doesn't even have to be the biggest page. I think that the Citizens Fireman's grown pretty substantially to be a page that's as new as it is. But, I don't care if we had 2 followers tomorrow. Like, if I can wake up and keep myself motivated and influence one person out there to do the same thing for themselves, then I think all of it's worth it.
yeah, absolutely. And everyone has to have that mission and their values and their vision for whatever they want to do because you see these accounts pop up everywhere. And yeah, I was looking at your page the other day when we were talking, and you have more followers than the TBM page does, which is awesome. Um, but it's like you see all these other different pages just kind of pop up here and there, and they have no real um, sustenance, right? Like they're kind of pop in and then pop out, and they're gone. And I think stuff that makes pages like your page and Preston's Fit Fire Fortitude page and Fit to Fight Fire pages, they have that core value, their mission, their vision for where they want to go for it, right? Like for us at TBM, it's through shared experiences and knowledge sharing, right? Because I was a new guy who didn't know crap, and thank the Lord that I had good officers and good friends and good mentors that poured into me to now put me in the position with my knowledge and even through shared experiences that I know what I know. And if we can, affect one other person, just like you said, that's enough for me. But I'm hoping it goes wider than that. And social media, dude, it is weird. Like I'm still getting used to it, and it's weird. And because I've never really prioritized social media, but once you get, that presence on there, it's almost expected. And uh, like you said, whenever you're influencing other people, right, that's a big deal. And some people can be brutal online, I've noticed. But like recently, I posted a mask up video. I've said it on here before, but every single morning when I check off my air pack, I throw my pack on my back and I do a mask up. That's how I check it off. I'm not wasting any more air than I would if I was turning it on and turning it off, bleeding the air off. And I posted that. And like, okay, I can mask up quick. It was about a 10-second mask up. dude. And there's over like 1.2 million views on it now, which is blowing my mind because there's other things that get like 5 likes on. So I'm like, I don't know what was so special about that. Like I know personally 5 other people that can do the exact same thing that I just did, and I've seen them on here, but for whatever reason that took off, right? And there's been people reach out to me and they're asking me questions like, "Hey, how are you doing this with your hood? What gloves are you wearing? Is there any specific way you set up your mask? Blah 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 blah." And I'm like, "This is cool because now I'm doing what I set out to do, and that's help people, influence other people, right? Whether it be shaving off some seconds of a mask up drill or not, like that's what's been cool about it."
Yeah, that's what you're
Um,
there for.
yeah, exactly. And it's an affirmation aspect of it that just kind of gives me a little, and I'm sure you feel the same way, like a little bit of affirmation, knowing that like what you're doing, it's at least helping somebody. Because regardless, like I have these selfish reasons that I do these podcasts that it's not all selfish, but like I get to talk to guys like yourself. And last week I did a podcast with Rob Ramirez, and I got some cool ones on the books coming up. Like I'm getting to do that, and selfishly, like that makes me happy because I'm getting to learn from guys like that and talk to guys and build relationships. But like non-selfishly, that's where my mission and vision and values come in. Is and that's is hopefully helping one other person.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons why I'm excited to branch out with the next part of the Citizens Firemen with doing our own podcast too, because right now it's been all about building that platform to get people pretty much because there's no way to vet people online. As you said, the pages pop up all the time, and I'm sure that there's probably still even people out there, and I don't blame them that look at the Citizens Firemen and they've never seen it before, and they're like, hey, how do I trust this or whatnot? But I feel like we've built up a pretty decent little amount of followers that believe in some of the stuff that we've put out there and have kind of like, all right, I agree with this guy's mindset. So now we get to branch out with the podcast part of it and bring in these other people that I don't have the experience that they have. I don't have the knowledge that they do, but I've built the platform that I can bring them in and use both of those together to provide it with somebody else. And like you said, on a selfish side of it, you get to gain that from them too. One of the biggest influences to me, probably one of the greatest instructors I've ever had. Got to see him at a lecture this past August, I believe it was. Bobby Eckert. I was talking to him about doing a episode on our podcast whenever it gets going live a while back, and it's like I don't have the things, I don't have the experience stuff to offer people like that, but if you can get those people on your show, like you're still providing it to them.
Absolutely. And something that has been a little like mind opening. Like I was always like a little bit of like the imposter syndrome stuff, right? Like I'm I'm a nobody from nowhere, hosting a podcast, talking to some of the coolest dudes around, and it's a little intimidating to reach out to these people and ask them, like, "Hey, I know you don't know who I am, and this podcast doesn't mean a whole lot, but would you want to be on the podcast?" Right? And it's grown a little bit, right? Like at this point, like it's not that I don't care, but I've kind of grown a set of balls and just like the worst they're going to say is no, right? And
Yeah.
then the best that's going to happen is they're going to come on and they're going to kick ass. Hopefully we will get something good out of it. And I've suffered with that in my head a lot, and it's a little intimidating at times, especially talking to some of the giants that I've reached out to, like giants in my eyes, and getting to talk to them. And then on the other side of that, like there would be always people chirping, right? No man is a prophet in his own hometown, and of course I get it. Some of it's playful, some of it I'm sure there's a little bit of truth to it. But at the end of the day, I'm like, bro, it's not for me. Like, it's not me. I'm not trying to glorify myself here. Like these people are coming on here, and I'm learning just as much as you are. Like I'm just the vessel of this, and hopefully they get that, get something out of that.
Well, I've kind of dealt with some of the stuff since I've started the page of not really anybody coming to me and saying anything about it, but kind of some jokes getting tossed around here and there. Like I said, I work in a super small department that doesn't, I mean, I think we're up to like 23 line personnel now, for the entire department, 7 on a shift, not counting admin. But we was talking about it a few shifts ago, and I think the page is up to close to 9,000 followers now, which is, small compared to some of them that are out there. But like I said, I don't care if we had two, but that's the jokes, or if one person wants to poke fun at something, like what does the weight that they hold compared to you've obviously got just for say 9,000 people out there that they agree with something that you're saying. So you're
Hmm.
doing something right.
Yeah.
There's always
And
going to be the guy that wants to sit back in the recliner and just because he doesn't want to make something out of his time in the fire service, he just wants to sit there and enjoy 3 meals, a warm bed, and a recliner to sit in and go home. Be one of those guys we talked about earlier that wants to float by. They're going to be the ones that want to poke fun at you for trying to get outside of your department and do more for yourself and try to better others in the process too, because ultimately they're jealous. They don't have their same mindset as you and you're making them look bad. That's all it boils down to.
yeah, man. And aside from the social media aspect of it and the podcast aspect of it, like even outside training, I remember, I think it was 2 years ago now, me and the other tailboard on my shift, we were going down to Austin. It was the Round Rock area, and we were going to take a nozzle forward. And we hear people chirping like, "Why are you going to that? Like, we don't do that stuff here." Blah 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 blah. And I'm like, "Okay, like that's fine. I just want to go to this class." We get down there, and like everything they're teaching us, I'm like, "This is nothing new. Like, we do actually do this at our department. Like, what department do you work for? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know where they got that from, but it's just like that, right?" And then now, like, it'll show up on a fire or something. It's like, "Hey, the tailboard misfits here. Like, everyone watch out." And I'm like, "Oh, this is like," and a lot of it is for fun, right? It's a bunch of guys that I love to death, and you got to take it on the chin whenever you put yourself out there. There's going to be some people that have something to say like that, and that's okay. But the guys that say it maliciously, you're right. It's more of a, I don't want to say jealousy thing, but it's more of an insecurity for
Yeah,
their sake,
absolutely.
right? Especially whenever you know you said like you're an 8-year guy, but you're probably fairly tenured in your department. Like I'm a 3-year guy in my department. I've been in the fire service off and on for 10 years at this point. Public service for the full 10 years. Did some time private EMS, and I'm not proud of it. But I I'm a 3-year dude that's doing these podcasts and taking these classes and stuff like that. And you'll hear stuff, and it's okay for me. Like I always fall back to me, and like I'm confident in what I'm doing, and this isn't for me. Uh, and I always go back to like, what do I care about a 33-year-old dude that has no weight over my life saying something to me? Like I don't care. And the whole thing is like, don't take criticism from people that you wouldn't take advice from. That's what I've
That's one
come
of
to.
the best pieces of advice that I've ever gotten. That, and when it comes to the whole social media thing, I did an episode a while back with on a podcast, the Size Up with National Fire Radio with Pip, and while we were talking, he was talking kind of along the social media and getting a page started, things like that, and he said never check the comments. And
Never.
that holds true today because I'll post something on Instagram, make a reel or something, and like you said, sometimes you may get 50 likes on it, and the next thing you know, it's been viewed 2 million times. Some of them, they take off to have 1,000 comments, and you get on there and start reading some of them, and you're like, damn, like some of this shit's ugly.
Yeah, yeah. I posted actually Preston posted a clip from our podcast that we did. It was my it's kind of funny. It was my first experience with anything going viral, if you will. And there was a lot of very opinionated comments on that post, and a lot of like at first I was like, these people are pissing me off. He was like, dude, just don't even read the comments. I'm like, yeah, I don't know how you don't read the comments, but even on the mask up video that I just posted that we were talking about, like there were some people commenting on that, and like there were some that were like, you could tell they were being smart asses, but it's just like they're just misinformed, right? Like, and I would explain stuff to them to hopefully just help them. But then there's people out there just being completely malicious, and like I'm like, okay, I'm not going to respond to them. That's going to look bad on me. But I will highlight one comment on that post. It was just a mask up video, and some guy commented on there, and he was like, "All that just for a game of pickleball," and that one made me laugh really, really hard. I'm like, what's funny is like we went on a stint there for a while. That every day after dinner, man, we were going to the pickleball courts and playing pickleball. So it was funny. It was actually pretty hilarious. But you're right. Never check the comments. That's a solid piece of advice for anyone wanting to get into the public style of social media. Uh, as far as social media, like have you been able to? I mean, like obviously, besides like this, have you been able to make connections with people that you just never thought was going to be possible through it?
Oh, absolutely. Like I said earlier, with the influences that I've had, I've had my fair share of good influences in the department that I work for and bad influence as well. But I can say that since I've started the Citizens Fireman and actually started dumping time and effort into it, that it's helped me make connections with people that I could have never imagined was possible. The guys that I used to look up to, the whenever I would follow their pages and or I'd see them come up for a conference somewhere, and I'm like, oh man, like this dude's a fire service all-star. Like it's great to be able to make those connections with those guys, and then you get to realize like, hey man, they're just a fireman like me, and then you end up becoming friends with them, and you can hit them up on a random Tuesday and just talk shop. Like that's one of the best. That's the selfish part for me.
Yeah,
Like is
yeah,
getting able to just make these connections with people, and some guy, like I said, they may see him writing an article in Firehouse or something, and they're like, oh man, like this dude's got it figured out, and you're like, well shit, dude, let's call him up and talk to him.
yeah.
That
You know
that's the part that just kicks ass for me.
there's people out there, and most of the guys that you see, the people that you are describing, they're more than open. If as long as you just reach out and talk to them, and they're more than willing to answer any questions that you may have. A lot of times, give you some insider advice, and I've learned that regardless of the classes that you go to, or regardless of the people that you talk to, not everything is going to be applicable to your department. But it's nice to have that different uh, opinion and different
It is.
aspect of it, because they might, especially when it comes to tactics or the way you do a specific skill, they might have just a little bitty, twitch in what they do, that out of their entire thing that they tell you might be applicable to you. But that one little thing is going to help you and your department or your crew improve. That's bringing
And they're
true.
looking at it non-biased, like
Yeah,
they most of them probably have never even heard of the department that you work for. They have no
right.
ties to it to anybody else. They're coming at it with what they feel like is the best advice to get done for your mission as the fire department, so for your citizens, for your community. But talking about everybody out there just being people, a funny story actually, the conference that we went to back in August was about a 6 hour drive away. Well, we went over to Passion for the Crafts lecture conference in North Carolina and had an amazing time over there. But while we were driving over, we're going up the interstate, and I'm texting some people I know asking if they're going to be there or whatever. And I text Shane Bentley from the Bears of the Oath asking if he's going to be there. He's like, no, I'm not gonna make it. I'm gonna spend some time with the family, whatever. But he's like, when you get up there, go find Raymond Dorval and give him a hug, tell him that I miss him. And I'm sitting there reading these text messages. I start laughing, and I went up with my buddy, my engineer at work, and he's driving the support truck up the interstate, and he's like, "What's funny?" And I'm like, "Man, it's like Shane Bentley just told me to go find Raymond and give him a hug when we get there." I'm like, "Dude, I don't know this dude. Like, he's fire service all star from Miami-Dade. Like, can't just go do that." Ended up spending so much time with him up there and getting to know him on a personal level that like it's just another one of those connections made. And like I said, on the way up there, I was thinking that this guy was just bigger than life. Like he's up here because he's one of those guys that I've followed for a long time. And then you get to know him, and you're like, hey man, he's just like me. He's just from a different part of the country.
Mm-hmm. Which is awesome. I've really haven't branched out a large area yet. This is going to be episode number 7 since I've taken over, and so we're still kind of moving it. But like, I don't want to spoil some of the upcoming guests that I have, but like, I got a couple on there that I'm pretty excited about, and it's been fun to make those connections and really talk to those guys. And coming up like this week or so, as we're recording this, I'm going to release the podcast I did with Rob Ramirez, and that dude has been awesome to me so far. I mean, sending me books to read and sending me people that I need to have on my show, and kind of like making connections for me so far. And he was a guy that, exactly like you just explained, like for me, he was larger than life. Like I listened to the scrap pretty regularly, and he was the guy that every time I listened to his scrap, I just walked away fired up, because his passion was just there, right? And like some of the stuff he says, he might be one of the best people for me when it comes to one-liners, and I'm like a quotes like geek and nerd, and he's got some pretty badass ones for me. And just guys like that. And I'm sure it'll continue to happen. It's going to continue to happen for you. And The more we get out and go to these classes, and the more like the podcast obviously helps a lot. Um, but those connections just keep happening, and that's the cool part about it. So as far as like the direction with the Citizens Firemen, and I know you're about to start a podcast, so do you want to talk about the podcast real quick?
So I actually just uploaded kind of a little prologue last week to test out some equipment. It's only like 4 minutes long, just to make sure that I could figure out how to upload everything because I'm not the most tech savvy person in the world. But we actually start next week recording with our first two guests. I won't say who they are yet, but I'm super thrilled for it. But it's going to be a guest driven style podcast, kind of like how we're doing right now. It's just going to have somebody on there, sit down, talk shop about whatever topics we can come up with and spread it out to the masses. Whoever wants to tune in and listen to it, hopefully we can pass something along to them.
Are you going to be able or be doing like the video style like we're doing right now, and as well as the audio, or is it just going to be audio?
I'm gonna try to do the video too. So far I've got it signed up on Apple and Spotify, and I've also created a YouTube account for it. So I plan on trying to put the video up on YouTube and then just doing the audio on Apple and Spotify.
Yeah, and we'll get the links for all that, and we'll list it in the description below this podcast right here. And that's super exciting, man. I love when people, and we talked about it. Like you have a following larger than mine, but I love when people just start a podcast because I've talked to a couple people about like them starting their podcast, and I'm always like super encouraging. So I'm like, who am I, right? Like I used up until recently, I was using my iPad, and I was using the camera on it, right? Like, and I pay for Zoom. It wasn't, and then like the stuff I have now, it's not even expensive. Like I have a $30 audio mixer from Walmart. I have one of those ring lights that the social media influencers use, and like a microphone that I had from my camera. Like it's not that expensive if you want to pay for it, and you don't even need the stuff that I have. Like you can literally just do it with your AirPods and an iPad or a tablet or something like that, and it's super simple. And you always take something away from every single conversation you have.
You do.
And
And
so,
that's Mike with a tip of the spear was the one who's really helped me get everything going and what I needed to get figured out. And whenever I was just tossing the idea around and he started trying to push me towards doing it, one of the things he said, he was like, dude, I started out with my phone and a pair of headphones for it. He was like, that's what I did all my recording on. So, like you said, it doesn't take much and it doesn't have to be anything elaborate as long as you're out there spreading the good news or you're doing something for somebody.
yep, I've followed Tip of the Spear for a long time, and I've talked with Mike just briefly. I'll tag him and stuff, and he'll tag me and stuff. And he's a guy that I would love to get on the podcast before long. And honestly, up until this point, it's been one of those things. It's like I don't know, it's kind of intimidating. That guy's had some pretty big guests on his podcast. I don't know that he would say yes to me, but some of the episodes that he's had have been just phenomenal. I remember the first episode I actually listened to. That was my introduction to Tip of the Spear was Tim Klett. He did an episode with Tim Klett, and I was just like, God. That first of all, I was like, Tim Klett's a badass. He's a rock star. And I was like, this is podcast is awesome. So I've listened to several since then. Um,
That's what got me into the fire service podcast. I was driving out of state to go to class on some military orders, and guys at work would talk about different podcast stuff like that, and I was like, man, I'm tired of listening to music. And the very first fire service podcast that I ever actually tuned into and listened to the full thing wasn't Tip of the Spear, but it was Mike's episode on National Fire Radio whenever he started Tip of the Spear. So he's kind of been an influence there for me along the way too when it comes to the social media stuff. He's helped out a lot with our page and definitely getting the podcast up and off the ground.
yeah, it's interesting to see people's like style, I guess is what I'm trying to say on social media, like their theme. And his is one that like I idolize. Like his all of his posts are really good. Like the videos he posts, not to mention like yes, the videos are cool, but even the captions, like I'm just like
They
this
make you
guy
think a
is
lot.
yeah, and it's squared away too, right? Like this guy's he's obviously been in it and he knows what he's talking about. And, just like we talked about, it's hard to vet your sources when it comes to social media and stuff like that. And when you read his stuff, there's no doubt about it. Like he knows what he's talking about.
It vets itself.
Yeah, it's not fake, it's not made up. There's and I don't want to like put anybody down, but there's podcasts out there that surround themselves with negativity, and they use this platform to talk shit about departments and their administration and everything. And it's just like, dude, come on, that's not what we're here for.
No,
We have to control what we can control. And for me, that's like you said, spreading what needs to be spread, and that's good tactics and any type of knowledge that people may have and experiences that they've been through. Right, I think that's an important part of it.
100%. And there's a lot of, I feel like just the whole social media has changed a lot for us in the fire service. We get these great things like this. We don't have, if it wasn't for platforms like all these social media pages and podcasts, stuff like that, we wouldn't have the opportunity to learn from these people that have been there, done that. All we would have is those influences that we've had within our departments. So, it's changed it drastically, but I think we've lost some from it too. A big push in the area where I'm from whenever I was first came into the fire service was for some reason everybody in this area like vertical ventilation was a bad word. Like they hated it. Like, oh my God, why would we put a fireman on a roof of a burning house? Like, well, you're putting him under it. But and I think that we've lost some sense because of social media as well. I mean, just to stay on that topic kind of vertical ventilation, you see videos now of firemen falling through a roof. You get on, guarantee you, if you hop on and you start looking up firefighter videos on YouTube or whatever, you're going to find some old video that probably happened 10, 15 years ago, and you're going to watch a fireman fall through a roof. And you immediately think, firefighter on roof falls through. That's bad. We can do this a million different ways. But they don't stop to think that also of why is every large department that's going to these jobs, why are they still using these tactics? But we're quick to judge these departments. We're quick to judge Boston whenever they lose firefighters in row homes and when they're fighting fire in abandoned row homes. We're quick to judge these West Coast departments out in Cali whenever they lose a firefighter on a roof because those guys vent everything. And even all the big East Coast departments over here, kind of closer to where I'm at, they all vent too. But we were quick to look at something that we saw put out on social media and to jump on changes for our own personal thoughts or the tactics in our department because of them. So I think the social media has given us a lot, but at the same time, it's taken some from us too.
Well, I think with and it goes to the same thing that we were talking about with like the hands-on training aspect of it. And I wish, like, unfortunately, the handful of people that will actually listen to this are probably not the people that need to hear it. But you know, just because Joe Blow's social media page says this, it's not necessarily. Don't get me wrong. I'm sure there's some out there that are blatantly wrong, but it doesn't mean that they're wrong.
It just
It's
may not
okay.
fit for you or your department. Like,
Exactly. So
it's going to
you
be
have to
different for all of us.
absolutely. You just have to pick and choose, and not in a negative way, but you just have to find what's applicable to you. And if there's nothing applicable to you, it's okay. Just move on. Like you don't have to write some nasty comment on their page, or you don't have to talk shit about them, and you don't have to run them through the mud because at something they do differently than what you do.
So
And you hear it.
so easy on social media. If you just take it and you scroll up just a little bit, it's not there anymore. You don't
Yep.
have to spend the next 30 minutes on there getting pissed off over something that somebody's posted. And as you said, like, anybody's more than welcome to go say whatever they want on any of my posts. I'm not replying back to the comments on it anyways. I took Pip's advice to heart on that one because the comments get deep. But it's easy to just, if you don't agree with it, you don't have to follow the damn page. You don't have to sit there and type all day. Just scroll along.
Yeah, and if you feel led to put a comment on there that is going to like make you angry or something like that, there's this beautiful button called the block button, and I
Yeah.
encourage people to use it whenever you feel that way about it. Like it's no sweat off my back if someone doesn't agree with me. Like if you have a different of opinion and you want to express it, cool, do it. Like maybe I'll learn something, but at the end of the day, like I'm not gonna lose sleep over it. So
Well, like you said, I feel
that
like the people that need to hear that and probably need to hear a lot of the things that I put out there on social media too. They're probably not reaching the right audience anyways, because I mean, they're the people that are already there. They share something with you. They share a likeliness of the mindset, the same thoughts on shift. It would be amazing if we could take every bit of that and just push it out and make everybody grasp it. If everybody out there could be just a kick ass all star on the fire ground, we'd have the best service ever, and we still do, in my opinion. But it it kind of pisses me off, and I'm sure it does a lot of others out there. Whenever you put so much into the job, and then you still have those people that, as we spoke of earlier, that just want to they want those side benefits of the fire service, and they don't want to give anything back to it. They want those
Yep.
3 meals and hope that they get a full night's sleep. I see people come to work and they view their day at work as an off day from their side job. It's like that's wrong to me. Like, that's not why we're here. If you're
Right.
more concerned with what you have going on your days off, aside from family, things like that, because whether we all want to admit it or not, we're going to walk away from the job someday. But when you're more concerned with mowing yards, fixing pipes, building houses, whatever you do, than you are what's going on in your department or on your rig for that day, then you've got your priorities for the job way out of whack.
I had the conversation. I watched, like I think I mentioned earlier, like I watch Corley Moore's weekly scrap like every week. Like there's so much stuff that goes on, through that. The people he have on that I learn a lot from. And the guy he had on this past week, I think his name was Robert Wynn. I think it was his name. And first of all, if you haven't listened to it, go listen to it. Phenomenal podcast. That dude's testimony alone is worth listening to. But he said something towards the end, and he was talking about the oath. It was like, do you even know the words to your oath? Like, you need to go back and dissect your oath that you took, right? Because even the people that are disgruntled, like at some point, they wanted to be a fireman. They didn't get into the job knowing that they were going to hate it or that they would be in the place that they are right now. We just have to find a way to tap into that.
You do.
And
And, if you could just remember who you were that first day that you walked into the firehouse, every day that you came to work, because I wish that I could still feel the same way. I'm more in love with the job now than I feel like I ever have been, but I still wish that I had that innocence of a 19-year-old kid walking in nervous as hell for his first shift who thought that I was just going to be going fire to fire, kicking ass all across the city because you wanted to be the best that you could be at that job. And like you said, everybody's been that person at some point. It doesn't matter if you're 30 years on the job now and most of the other guys around you would classify you as a shitbag. Something went wrong in your career that led you astray. And I'm sorry for whoever did that to them. But at some point in time, you were that young kid who walked in and had a love for the job. And if you could remember that and you could bring that spark back to work with you every day that you get on the rig, like the fire service would be such a better place.
man, that's so good because I thought about this the other day and it was just like the true senior guys, whether they retired as a chief or a captain or whatever, the old guys, no offense if they ever hear this, that are still in the fire service and they're still teaching and they're still talking on podcasts and they're still sharing what they know, right? Like a lot of those guys are few and far between when it comes to like the big scope fire service. Imagine how many of those guys are out there that are just disgruntled, that are just over it, that are just aren't invested into the job, and how much more experience and knowledge that those guys could bring to the fire service. It's just their attitude towards it. And like you said, like I feel the same way. I coming in as a new guy didn't cause you to be the way that you are. And what I mean by that is I didn't personally make a decision to affect you and your mood and your attitude towards the job. And all I ask is like a little bit of sharing, right? Just help me out. Tell me some experiences you've had and really just like be the definition of the senior guy, right? Because unfortunately, it seems like throughout the entire fire service that those senior men are lacking or uh, they're kind of dissipating, right? We don't have people stepping into those roles. That's an aspect of the fire service that we should never lose. We should never lose that senior guy, whether it
No,
be the old captain or even an older tailboard. Like we shouldn't lose those people.
I feel like you see a bunch of it now too going around. People want to throw out that generational divide. And I don't think there's any generational divide in the fire service at all. I think it's an attitude issue. It's not an attitude issue with younger guys. It's not an attitude issue necessarily for say with older guys. It's a difference between the two. And the senior guys that are out there that just want to throw out, first of all, if you're out there claiming the title for yourself of senior man and you proclaim that there's a generational divide that keeps you from teaching the new guys on your rig something, you're not the senior guy.
Mhm.
you're there for the wrong reasons and you're not holding up to what your position should be in your department.
Yeah.
We've got people that learn differently. We've got people who didn't have the same life experiences as you. Just because the guy came in at 18 years old and he doesn't know how to start a chainsaw, he might not have went out and chopped wood with his dad when he was a kid. He might not have grown up around a bunch of farmland, things like that. It's your job to pass along everything that's been given to you to the next person in line. It doesn't matter what generation, anything it comes from. And it's also up to you to keep getting better too. Just because you step into that for said senior position doesn't mean that you've reached your peak. It doesn't matter if you've got 30 years on the job or 1 year on the job. The ink on your application's not getting any wetter. It's drying out more and more by the day. And every day that you show up for a new shift, you're a day closer to your retirement party. You've got to make something out of it. And sitting back in the recliner blaming things off on the younger guys in your department or around the country or whatever, you're not doing shit for the fire service by doing that.
Yeah, I actually, wrote something about this whole generational leadership, right? And I think when I sat back and looked at it, like I'm probably in the middle. I'm 29, and the first part of my life, I kind of grew up without all of this technology, and as I got older, like I had all this technology. So I'm a little mix of both. I'm not super savvy when it comes to tech, but I could probably learn it if I applied myself. And a lot of times, I'd rather do stuff the old school way rather than the new school. And aside from learning, right, because now everything in these schools are all taught on a laptop or a tablet or whatever, like there's not a whole lot of difference, right? And someone said something once that was like, the 20-year guys at your department said the same thing about you whenever you came in, right? Like these kids don't know what they're doing, but they were able to take the time, obviously, to teach you and mentor you to get you to where you are now. And now, like, you just got to repay the favor. And I don't doubt, like, with the world that we live in, um, that there are these kids that are coming into the fire service that there are probably more that have never turned a wrench a day in their life, that have never operated a chainsaw, that really don't have any life experience outside of their home because of the video game takeover. And I kind of caught a little bit of that, and I could totally see it. And I know people and kids that spent their entire high school life outside of school on a freaking video game, and they have more friends through Xbox Live, if that's still a thing, than they do at the school that they go to. And so, like, I could totally see the divide there, but at the same time, I'm like, these guys they got into the fire service for the same reasons that you did, right? They just didn't come with the same life experience that you did. And so, you, as their officer, as their senior guy, it's your responsibility to get them up to speed. And however that may be, if they need help starting a chainsaw, like teach them how to start a chainsaw. Some people have never mowed a yard a day in their life. Like, teach them how to mow a yard. Like, it's not that hard. You just have
Yeah,
to.
it's to me, it's not their job to mold to you. It's your job to mold them. I mean, you're putting these roles, you're put in the position for a reason. Uh, for say as a officer. Now, a lot of informal leadership goes on in the fire service, or at least it should, with the whole senior guys riding the back step, things like that. But especially for those that are sitting in company officer positions, riding the trucks, like it is your job to mold these younger people coming in that are getting on your truck and riding with you. It's not their job to step in and just take one look at you and say, all right, let me just copy and paste everything that he wants me to be over to myself. You've got to put the work in to make them better. And that kind of goes back to the whole somebody paved the road for you long before you came in, and the fire service is going to be there long after you're gone. So you might as well leave it better for somebody else.
Yeah, and that's what I was about to say. Like, as a fireman, like what I would love to do is just leave the fire service, leave my department, leave the crew I'm on, uh, and make it better than what it was when I got there. Hopefully, I add some type of value to it that it's better when I leave. And I it's something that I'm pretty passionate about, and it's just like people have lost the art of having difficult conversations, and that's up and down. Like, I feel like it should be pretty freaking easy for an officer to tell you whether you're hitting the mark or not. But unfortunately, I see it more times than not. Like, it doesn't happen. And these guys just kind of skate by, whether it be a rookie or not. Like, people are scared to have a tough conversation and tell someone, like, hey, man, you suck and you need to get better, or hey, you're not hitting the mark, you need to get better, and then help them. Like you obviously don't just tell them that and say, hey, figure it out, right? Like you got to help them. But I've noticed time and time again, and I've been around some situations where there's been some guys that have been around, talking shit about a rookie, and I'm like, and they're saying like, oh, he doesn't do this and doesn't do that, and I'm like,
Have
have
you
you guys
shown him?
told him that? Like, or are you just sitting here like running your mouth about it? It's like, oh, well, he knows. I'm like, I get that you assume that he knows, but does he know that he's not hitting the mark for you guys? Like, he doesn't know he's fucking up. And you need to be able to tell him that. And if he does know that and he's not missing the mark, well, that's a whole different issue. But if he doesn't know that he's missing the mark, then he can't improve. Like he's thinking he's skating by with no problems whatsoever. And I think if more people could just see the value in tough conversations, and some one of the reasons like I'm passionate about is because I've had people in my life and my career have those tough conversations with me. Like, hey, bro, you run your mouth too much. Check, got it. Not running my mouth anymore, right? Like it's more than that, but just those people in your life that will have those tough conversations. Like people
It's
need
needed.
to, yeah, it's 100% needed. People need to grow a set of balls and just have those conversations with people. At the end of the day, like as long as you come in there with candidness and care, like if they take that badly, like that's on them. You just got to make sure that you do your right part and not come just straight up attack. Like there's an art to it, and if you don't know it, read a book. Like I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of departments are putting people in bad situations with this too, coming from an admin level or from a municipality level, especially in the volunteer service around where I'm at. The unfortunately it's not a job that's cut out for everybody. And the whole bullshit of looking at and saying, well, volunteer servicism is dying and we need anybody that we can take. No, the fuck you don't. Not everybody out there on the street is cut out to be in the fire service. And you're really putting people in a difficult situation whenever you've got these guys that do love the job and you're filling their departments full of people that can hardly wipe their own ass. I mean, unfortunately, that there's no easy way to put it. I was reading an article on Facebook this morning that kind of went along the same route because this department was super happy to share and was proud as could be that they had hired a 75-year-old female firefighter. She's 75 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have no business stepping into the fire service at that point. I don't care how jam up you think you may be. Like, you're putting somebody in a bad spot. Or a lot of volunteer departments around where I'm at, they're like, well, we'll take this person on and they'll just be good at this one thing. Like, we'll just use them for this one thing. Like, I need firemen. Like, I need people that want to go out there and they want to put in the work and they want to kick ass at this. They want to be that next fire service all-star. And it kind of just gets back to we're not taking it away, but if they could, I think a lot of municipalities and admin across the country would love to just wipe out that whole blue collar aspect of the job.
Yeah, and that's something that I just hate. Like and there's something to making sure your uniform looks good and like you're dressed properly and all that stuff. But like the more you take away like the blue collar side of it, like the fire service is still very much blue collar. And if you don't believe me, show up on a fire scene, right?
It
Like
is.
there is work being done and there are men getting dirty and they want to, right? Like uh, I 100% support the whole PR things, but whenever we get more, obsessed with showing off a fire truck rather than our response or our training, like there is a fine line there. And luckily, luckily, very luckily, like I'm not a part of an organization that does do that. Like we do our due time in the community, right? But like we still value our training, our fire training, our EMS training. Like that stuff doesn't take precedence over. But I do know that there are fire departments out there that are scheduling PR events over, fire training, right? They haven't trained in 4 months, but they've done 4 PR events in those 4 months. Like I
You
do know that
you
that's happening.
logged more supposed training hours during the month of October on Target Solutions because of you're logging all your PR events than you have any other time for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
That's an issue. And I come from a department where we do company level fire inspections. Like for me as a company officer where I work, I have to be a licensed state inspector. So there's a fine line. Like admin wants these inspections done. They want these numbers because that's what looks good. But as a company officer, it's a fine line to walk with your company and the rest of your guys because you've got to switch gears a lot. You've got to go from that, yeah, all right, we've got to go out and do inspections. We got to put the button ups on. We got to make everything look nice and pretty. And then you're trying to squeeze in too, like, all right, well, I also want to take these guys out and I want to cut some holes today on a prop, or I want to go force some doors. Let's go stretch some lines on some abandoned buildings, something like that. So it's a fine line balance for a lot of departments like mine.
Yeah, and I'm not a company officer, but I've had some insight, and have friends that are. And one of the main themes that continues to come up, and we're the same way. Like we're expected to do uh, fire hydrants, and we're expected to go do inspections, and there's certain times of the year where that stuff gets busy for us, and it really comes down to time management. You have to be able to manage your time really, really well. Otherwise, the day is going to get away from you, and next thing you know, it's been 4 months since you went training, and the time management part of it. Like I'm kind of curious. Like, have you been successful and as the company officer and wrestling those inspections and wrestling whatever else you may have to do while getting that training in?
We've laxed off on our inspection numbers here lately, but one of the biggest things that I think really showed for our company when it comes to getting stuff done like that, I was actually off for a shift, come back into work, and of course, whenever we're just like everybody else, somebody takes off, everybody rides up. So my best friend moved over to my seat and riding captain for the day. And I come back and he's like, yeah, we went and did 21 inspections, went to the gym, and then went out and trained while you were gone. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like that's what I love to hear because I believe actually I was gone to drill that weekend, and I was kind of talking about it with some guys in the army, and they're like, well, how do you feel when you have to step away from work? And I'm like, I feel confident in it. Like I feel confident that I can turn my back and leave these guys and expect them to do the right thing. And that just goes to show, I mean, to me, that shows me that we're on the right track.
Yeah, and it speaks a lot about yourself too, because I think one of the biggest things with leadership, right, is empowering and you're leading leaders, right? Like you want to develop those underneath you, and the tale of a leader is whenever he's not there, she's not there, that the machine still runs well oiled, and they're still getting the inspections, getting the trainings, they're doing what they know is expected. Because
Yeah.
I think we all know those crews that when dad's gone away from the house, like it's a free for all. Like I've
Everything
been
just
there,
goes to
I
shit.
get it. Like, but those squared away crews are the ones that get stuff done when their officer's not there. So that's awesome. That's awesome.
It is because I mean I've never watched a rig pull up on scene, pop the air brake and get out and be like, damn, our captain's off today, so we're gonna have to wait on second due to get here. Like they're still gonna go to work on a fire. So they still put in the work back at the station too. I'm super blessed with the guys that I work with.
Yeah, and the whole other aspect of that is like being able to function without your officer. Like whether he's taking vacation or whatever, especially your crew. Like forget overtime and stuff like that. All of that plays a certain role in it, but uh, just because the driver has stepped up to officer that day and your firefighter's driving and you got someone else in the back seat or whatever, like as long as you guys are all clicking on the same page and you know what you're doing, like things are still going to go just as smooth with or without that officer.
It's what you love to see.
Yeah. So the citizens fireman, man, what does it look like in the future for you? What are you hoping to accomplish with it, and goals that you have set for yourself? Like I know we talked a little bit about the podcast, but what else?
So aside from the podcast, I'd like to eventually get it branched out to a few more social media platforms. Plan on kind of moving over to Facebook here eventually. Don't want to give up on the whole Instagram world. It seems to be where we've had our luck at getting our start going. So really like that platform. Eventually later on, kind of taking it slow right now because as kind of talked about, I'm still drilling with the Army Reserves right now, unfortunately. It's not exactly the best time in the world. But once my commitment's up there, I think I'll have a little bit more time to put into it. I won't be having to travel for other things. So I'd kind of like to use it as a platform to get into a little bit more of the instructing world. I've had the opportunity to go instruct with some other people with their groups. Depending on how things go with my wife's pregnancy right now, may have the opportunity to go teach at MAFC down in Atlanta this year. So that'll be big. But once I'm done with my commitment with the military, that's kind of the steps I want to move the citizens firemen towards is becoming more of a training group and trying to bring some of the training to a lot of our local departments, some of our smaller volunteer departments, stuff like that, that they can't really get out and they can't go to things like MAFC or FDIC, Firehouse Expo. They can't go to these big conferences and get the good news that a lot of us are got the opportunity to go get and start bringing some of that back to them.
Awesome, dude. That's good news. The I love the like what you said, just giving back to the smaller the volunteer departments and stuff like that. People that some of the volunteers around here, like I work part time for a volunteer department in the town that I live in, but we're all career guys. But I do know like where I started my fire service career, that department is filled with people that plumb on that plumbing is their full time career. They might not have the time to dedicate to go get the trainings and stuff that we're all fortunate enough to get to attend.
It
And
is, they can't take a week to drop what they've got going on. I'm blessed. My department's going to pay me overtime to go 2 states over and attend these classes. Like they can't put their business down or tell their employer like, "Oh, I've got to go take this class." So, if some of the things that I've been blessed to get taught by some of these people that, as we talked about earlier, I've got the network and make connections with, if I can take some of that stuff and crunch it down into a few hours and get their interest bought into it, then that's a win for me.
is maybe not on the instructing side, but are you going to be at any other conferences this year?
Right now, I'm not registered for anything, but I usually try to attend at least one a year. I think next year, so not 2024, but hopefully 2025, I'm gonna try to make it down for Dadgum in Texas. Try to get connected back in with some of the Bears guys, things like that. It's been a while since I've got to attend any of their training, so we'll
That's
see
awesome.
what the future holds. Just kind of trying to take it slow right now. My wife's about to have our second child here in a few months, so we're not trying to get two heads over heels with making any plans right now.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. I have three children, and I will say that 1 to 2 was pretty rough. Once you get more than two, like it's just another day. So that's very smart of you to not try to overplan yourself.
It is. That's all I said. I'm hoping to get to go teach at MAFC this year, but it's kind of falling really close with our due date. So we'll see how that goes. If not, there'll be plenty of other opportunities.
Awesome. So if people want to get a hold of you, man, how would they do that?
You can find the page on Instagram right now. It's the underscore citizens underscore firemen. Like I said, that's the only place that we're at right now. I have made a YouTube account under the page name as well as Spotify and Apple for the podcast. So that'll be going live with the first true episode, probably about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks. It'll definitely be before the end of February. And then maybe we can start branching out on the Facebook. But for right now, you can reach out, find us on Instagram, or if you're really, really good at digging, you can find me on my personal account on Facebook under Robert Evans.
Awesome, dude. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really enjoyed this conversation.
No, anytime, I thank for the opportunity. I always love come on talk shop with anybody.
Absolutely.
Like I say, over with National Fire Radio, talking about the job's going to make it better. So I'm all for it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks, guys. This has been Tailboard Misfits Podcast, episode 7. Real quick, before we close it out, I just wanted to highlight a few things. Right now, if you head over to tailboardmisfits.com, our hoodies, we have two different kinds. They're black and white and black and red. Super badass, super good quality. They're 15% off as long as you use the discount code hoodie15. Also wanted to take a little bit of time to discuss a upcoming fire conference that we're going to be a part of. It's the Come and Take It Fire Conference. It's going to be hosted in Grapevine, Texas, April 5th through 7th of this year. The lineup is just incredible. Chief Clyde Gordon, Lieutenant Tim Klett, Lieutenant Ray McCormick, Chief Rob Backer, just to highlight a couple of them. It's a relatively easy registration process through Fire Nuggets. It's only $300 for 3 days. We're going to have 2 days of lecture as well as 1 day of hands-on training with some of the best instructors in the nation. You can find that on Facebook through, if you just search Come and Take It Fire Conference, or head over to Fire Nuggets website. They're handling all the registration. We'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for listening.